Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a powerful tool that's famous in top business schools, but honestly, it's a tool for anyone who wants to get better at making really tough decisions. We are talking about the CASE method.
So, let's just start with this question. Think about it. How do you practice for those huge, high-stakes choices in life? You know, the ones where there's no answer key at the back of the book, and the consequences are very, very real. It's a tough one, right? And it really points to a huge gap in how most of us are taught to learn.
And that gap is the real-world problem. See, most of us grew up in a world of textbooks and clear right answers. But when was the last time a major career decision or a personal dilemma came with a neat little study guide? Exactly. The real world is messy, it's ambiguous, and the biggest challenge is bridging that gap between knowing something in theory and actually being able to do something with it.
Okay, look at this comparison. Your traditional lecture, it's fantastic for dumping a bunch of information into your brain. It's a one-way street. But the CASE method completely flips that script. It's a messy, active, two-way conversation that's all about applying the theory. So yeah, it might be less efficient if you're just trying to cram for a test, but it is way, way more effective for building skills you can actually use.
And this is exactly where the CASE method comes into play. It's a framework that was specifically designed to solve this problem, to get us out of our heads and into the world of doing.
So what is it really? At its heart, the CASE method is a flight simulator for making decisions. It literally drops you into the pilot seat of a real company facing a real problem. You get all the data, all the messy details, the conflicting opinions, the pressure, and you have to fly the plane. It's all the practice without the risk of actually crashing a multi-million-dollar company.
So how does this flight simulator actually work? What are the controls? Well, let's walk through the basic framework. Think of this as your pre-flight checklist, your guide for the whole investigation.
Here it is, the roadmap. First, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the decision maker. Maybe you're the CEO, maybe you're a marketing manager. Then, and this is crucial, you have to dig past the symptoms to find the real underlying problem. After that, you analyze the facts, you weigh your different options, and it all boils down to this. You have to make a clear recommendation and be ready to defend it.
Now, the absolute heart of this whole process is step 3, the analysis. This is where the real detective work kicks in. It's not about just passively reading a file, it's about dissecting the situation, looking for clues, and getting a really clear picture of the battlefield.
And one of the best tools for that is the SWOT analysis. Seriously, think of this as your strategic battle map. It forces you to separate what's happening inside the company, things you can control, like your strengths and weaknesses, from what's happening outside in the world, the opportunities and threats you have to react to.
So, for example, having a super customer-oriented culture, that's a strength. It's internal and it's helpful. But a new competitor entering the market, that's a threat. It's external and potentially harmful. By mapping out all 4 of these quadrants, you suddenly get this incredibly clear picture of the entire strategic landscape.
Okay, so you've drawn your map, you've got your SWOT. Now what? The analysis itself isn't the goal. It's the foundation you build your strategy on. It's what you do with it that counts.
This is where your strategy actually comes from. You start combining these quadrants. You ask questions like, how can we use our strengths to go after those opportunities? Or how can we leverage an external opportunity to fix one of our internal weaknesses? Suddenly, your SWOT analysis isn't just a list. It generates 3 or 4 distinct, viable paths you could take.
But how do you pick a path? This is where you have to define your decision criteria. You have to decide what actually matters most. Is it all about profit right now, or is long-term customer satisfaction more important? By actually assigning weights to these priorities, you can score your options and make a choice that is rational, logical, and most importantly, defensible. So you go through this whole thing, right? This intense mental workout. What do you actually walk away with? Because it's not just about solving one imaginary problem. It's about fundamentally upgrading your entire skill set.
So what's the real payoff here? Well, the whole process is designed to build 7 very distinct, very powerful skills. Let's break them down.
First up, you've got your core thinking skills. You are literally training your brain to organize unbelievably complex information, to apply abstract ideas to real-world problems, and, maybe most importantly, to come up with creative solutions that go way beyond the obvious answer.
Next up, people skills. Because let's be honest, the best idea in the world is useless if you can't convince anyone to go along with it. This method forces you to present your ideas, defend them against criticism, and persuade others, all while working with them to build an even better solution.
And finally, we've got the action skills. This process makes you confront your own biases, your own values. And above all, you get to practice the single most important skill of all, making a sound, reasoned decision under pressure with incomplete information.
Okay, this all sounds great, but I have to be clear. This method is powerful precisely because it's so difficult. It's not meant to be easy. It's designed to be a mirror of how messy and complicated reality actually is. And you have to see these challenges as features, not bugs. Because just like in real life, the problem isn't handed to you on a silver platter. There is never one single right answer. You're usually drowning in information, half of which is useless. It is intentionally ambiguous because that's what real leadership feels like. Which brings us to a much deeper point. This whole learning style goes back to the Socratic method, where the real goal is to understand the limits of what you know. It's about moving from a place where you think you know everything to a place where you're aware of what you don't know. And that awareness, that humility, that's the first step toward actual wisdom.
So, if it's not about finding the one right answer, then what on earth is the point of all this? Well, the ultimate goal is something much more fundamental. This is it. This is the whole game. The specific company in the case, the particular problem, that's all just the gym equipment. Your final recommendation matters so much less than the rigorous, analytical, and creative process you built to get there. The goal isn't the answer. The goal is to build a better mind.
And that leaves us with one final thought. Now that you have this framework, this flight simulator for your own mind, you don't need a business school classroom to use it. You can apply it to any messy, ambiguous challenge you're facing in your work or your life. So the only question left is, what messy problem are you going to tackle first?